Let me ask you something. Do you ever feel like you're just going through the motions in this modern, highly managed existence of ours? Like your physical body's here, but you're quite literally running on fumes. You know the feeling, waking up with that low-grade panic, endlessly scrolling through your day and marching through a routine but feeling inexplicably hollow inside. Well, if that sounds familiar, you are absolutely not alone. In today's Explainer, we're diving deep into the neurotheology of how to completely bypass this exhausted state. We're going to explore the actual biology of visionary states and how you can unlock true visionary clarity. To really get a grip on what's happening to us, we have to look at the original meaning of the word zombie. And no, we are not talking about the Hollywood horror movie trope here. Long before pop culture got a hold of it, the word came from the Congo tradition, zombie. It describes a person whose essential signal, their spirit, has been stolen. Even though their body keeps functioning, they become a walking absence. They're still walking, eating, and working, but that original vital signal is just gone. The biological hardware is running fine, but the divine breath, the true life force, is completely absent.
So what we're going to do is contrast this chronic, anxious survival mode, what the source material literally calls the zombie state, with the peak visionary states described by ancient mystics. It's a stark contrast. On one side, you have this highly managed existence fueled by constant survival anxiety. But on the exact opposite side, you have visionary clarity. This is characterized by peak insight, a profound sense of unity consciousness, and what neuroscientists actually call a gamma surge. To make the leap from chronic survival mode to visionary clarity, we first have to understand our own biological hardware.
Think of human consciousness like a map of the territory. Down at the very bottom, you've got delta and theta. These are our deep sleep and intuitive dreamlike states. Move up a bit and you hit alpha, which is a state of calm focus. Above that is beta, our active, waking stress state. But the ultimate destination, the absolute peak, is right at the top, gamma. Hitting anywhere from 30 to 100 plus hertz, this is the ultimate state of ecstatic insight and global brain synchronization.
But here's the catch. Most of us, we are completely stuck right in the middle, trapped in what's known as the beta hum. The zombie state is biologically driven by this exact frequency, vibrating between 13 and 30 hertz. It acts like a high-frequency cognitive veil made of racing thoughts, social management, and relentless survival anxiety. Imagine sitting at a red light, totally stationary, but you're revving your car's engine at 3,000 RPM. That's your brain at your desk. You're burning through a massive amount of energy just to maintain this hyper-vigilant alarm system, and it completely deafens your mind to any deeper intuition.
Now you might be thinking, okay, I'll just relax and think my way out of it. But you can't. You absolutely cannot just outthink this anxious state. Why? Because of your brain's default mode network, which we can basically call the CEO. This CEO is an incredibly rigid gatekeeper. It handles your executive function, critical evaluation, and that defensive, nonstop ego narration in your head. If you try to use willpower to relax, you're essentially just asking the CEO to fire itself. And trust me, it actively rejects that idea, keeping you securely locked in that survival loop.
So how do we get past this rigid boss? We need a biological override. And according to the sources, there is exactly one path in. Respiration is the single bypass in your body's autonomic firewall. It's literally the only autonomic function, meaning things your body does automatically, like digesting food or pumping blood, that you can instantly seize manual control of at any given second. By voluntarily changing the rate and depth of your breathing, you can forcibly alter your entire state of consciousness.
But here's the really insidious trap of the beta hum. If you're stuck in that chronic stress state, you are almost certainly chronically overbreathing without even realizing it. All this overbreathing blows off way too much carbon dioxide. And here's the kicker. Without enough CO2, the oxygen you breathe in gets locked inside your blood. It physically cannot cross over into your tissues, which causes a paradoxical state known as stagnant cerebral hypoxia. You are literally starving your brain of oxygen while you're hyperventilating air. This brings us to something amazing called the Bohr effect, which is the hard science of how we reverse that starvation. We usually think of CO2 as just a waste product, right? But it's actually the biochemical master key. When you deliberately hold your breath or extend your exhales, you let carbon dioxide build back up in your system. That CO2 literally alters the molecular shape of greedy hemoglobin in your blood, forcing it to finally unlock and dump all that stored oxygen directly into your brain tissue.
So what happens when we take this manual respiratory control to the absolute extreme? Like what happens when we use intense, sustained breath work to deliberately manipulate our blood chemistry so much that we completely starve the default mode network and just bypass the CEO entirely?
Well, through massive sustained hyperventilation, we can blow off huge amounts of carbon dioxide. This causes your blood pH to spike, putting you into a temporary state called respiratory alkalosis. Because your blood suddenly becomes alkaline, the blood vessels in your brain actually constrict. This safely and temporarily restricts blood flow specifically to the CEO. You are effectively locking the boss out of the building by simply cutting off its fuel supply.
And once that analytical guard is forcibly taken offline, something absolutely incredible happens biologically. Previously siloed areas of your brain, like your visual cortex and your emotional centers, suddenly start communicating wildly with each other. This produces a massive global gamma wave surge, vibrating anywhere from 30 to over 100 hertz. This is the exact brain frequency that ancient traditions associated with ecstatic worship, profound non-ordinary insight, and peak experiences of profound unity. The veil literally lifts.
The sources outline two primary biological technologies that can actually trigger this visionary surge. The first is the Wim Hof style, which involves 30 to 40 deep breaths followed by specific breath holds to create a controlled sympathetic spike. The second is the holotropic style, which is a much deeper practice involving 30 to 60 minutes of continuous mouth breathing without any pauses, leading to deep limbic hyperactivity. Let's pop the hood and see how these two very distinct breathing styles actually hack your nervous system.
First up, the Wim Hof style. This essentially forces your reptilian brain to panic, but safely. You voluntarily induce that respiratory alkalosis, which triggers a huge dump of adrenaline and stored glucose. It's a positive hormetic stress, meaning it's a short, intense burst of pressure that actually makes your system more resilient. But the real magic happens in the breath hold right after. You plunge into this incredibly deep parasympathetic recovery. People report this extraordinary quality of vast, quiet space between their heartbeats, creating high somatic resilience and a state of intense, alert stillness.
Then we have the holotropic style, which goes much, much deeper. This practice shifts the brain so drastically that the prefrontal cortex goes substantially offline, while your emotional limbic system becomes incredibly hyperactive. Because the CEO's rigid boundaries are completely dissolved, deeply held emotional and physical material finally surfaces. This produces intense trauma processing, spontaneous visionary imagery, and a profound catharsis that is biologically identical to deep psychedelic therapy. And you're doing it using absolutely nothing but air.
This hits on a really powerful reminder from our sources. You simply cannot politely outthink a survival alarm. If your amygdala is screaming, positive vibes and happy thoughts aren't going to turn it off. You are not thinking yourself into peace. You are using your very own biological hardware to chemically enforce it. You are bypassing that exhausting, high-frequency cognitive veil and allowing a much deeper, unified consciousness to finally take over the fractured animal soul.
Basically, your respiration is your biological remote control. It is literally the architectural path to the secret place of true presence. When all the noise of daily performance finally ends and that exhausting beta hum fades out, you arrive at a perfectly coherent space. This is the exact state where true neurotheological encounters happen. It's the space where your original quiet identity can finally, clearly be heard over the deafening noise of the modern world.
So wrapping up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question. Are you ready to rewrite your baseline reality? Because you already have the tools built right into your physiology. Are you willing to use your own breath to completely shatter the illusion of the zombie state, shut down that rigid CEO in your brain, and unlock your dormant visionary potential? The choice, quite literally, is right under your nose.